Hello and welcome. I'm Emmanuel, and today we are diving into ISO 27001 Annex A 5.8, which focuses on information security and project management. In this video, I'm going to guide you through the essentials of integrating information security into your project management processes. Now, I'm going to help you to provide you with some actionable steps, share some tips with you on how you can successfully meet ISO 27001 certification requirements. The goal is to weave security into every project so you avoid last-minute fixes and audit headaches. Now, let's dive into it. What is this Annex A 5.8? Now, it is all about ensuring that information security is woven into the fabric of your project management. That is it. There's no complex or there's no secret right here. If your organization runs any project, whether it's big or small, you should include security tags from day one. If you are not managing projects, then this control does not apply to you. But think of projects that you've managed in your organizations like product launches, software builds, or even office renovations. All of these need to have security from the scratch. Now, what are the methodologies, or what is methodology, or what methodologies do we use? Now, when we talk about methodologies, we are talking about a step-to-step process for planning, executing, and closing out this project. And so when we are talking about methodology, we are talking about whether the agile framework, or you can go by the traditional waterfall approach. You need to have a well-defined process or project management methodology. And that is where I refer to whether it could be an agile or it could be a traditional. But it doesn't end there. Whatever methodology that you choose, you need to make sure that you document it thoroughly. Integrate information security into every relevant stage of your project. Write down each step. How does it apply and which security checks needs to happen? Implementation. Now let's get into how you can implement this. The first thing that you need to understand is understand your information security requirement at the outset of the project. This starts when you initiate the project and define a scope. Now the outset means at the beginning of the project, and the scope is the boundaries. Now at this stage, you have to refer to what we call the statement of applicability, SOA, which includes the controls that you have already selected to mitigate across your organization. Your SOA is a list of ISO 27001 controls you have chosen. And why? Because they apply to your organization. So there's just the name goes, statement of applicability. If you're unfamiliar with how to create an SOA, don't worry. There are plenty of resources to help with that. And I also have a video on how you can create a statement of applicability. But the key takeaway is that you can use your predefined controls to ensure that information security is considered right from the beginning of any project. Your key takeaway is to use your existing control list to check off security tags early. In addition to your controls, you need to be able to reference any legal or regulatory requirements. For example, if you are working with personal data, you need to consider data protection regulations such as GDPR. If it's under GDPR, one requirement you need to perform is what we call the DPIA, that is the Data Protection Impact Assessment. And we'll have a video on Data Protection Impact Assessment where you can have a look at that also. Now, early in your project, you need to identify potential risks to data subjects, mitigate them. And so the DPIA, or the Data Protection Impact Assessment, is a document that shows how you have assessed privacy risks and plan how you are going to reduce them. So you can see how specific laws and regulations might necessitate, including information security considerations at the beginning of the project. This ensures that you don't face any fines or compliance issues later on. Engaging stakeholders. At the definition stage, you also need to engage with various stakeholders, clients, customers, and internal teams to ensure that you are meeting their security expectations. Stakeholders are people or anyone that is being affected by the project, inside or outside of your organization. This is also where you start thinking about things like your physical and your technical security. Will there be access control requirements for the physical location of the project or the network? And remember, access control talks about the rules about how you can enter a building or log into a system. You should also be addressing these issues earlier on during the beginning of the project. Now, risk management in projects. Incorporating risk management into your project methodology is also a good practice. You need to be able to identify the risks at the start of the project, assess them through the project's lifecycle, and you have to ensure that any information security risks are considered and mitigated from the scratch, all the way to the project launch. Risks, remember, is anything that could go wrong, or the probability that a threat will take advantage of a vulnerability to harm your system. Lifecycle also talks about all the phases of your projects. Now, the continuous review helps prevent surprises and ensure that security is baked into every step of your project. Now, security testing. As your project moves from the delivery stage, especially if it involves software development, it's time to start thinking about security testing. At what point in your project will you incorporate security testing? What is security testing? These are activities like code reviews, doing vulnerability scanning, penetration testing. You might also want to do a code review, implement vulnerability scanning, plan for penetration to identify what? Weaknesses before you go live. You don't want to publish your website and you realize that you are not well secured or there are some codes that were not reachable. No, you need to test every button on your website to make sure it's working effectively before you go ahead and publish it. It's essential to integrate these security activities into your project methodology and ensure that they are happening at the right stages. What are some of the common mistakes that organizations do? Now, while this all sounds pretty straightforward, it's easy to overlook some of them, especially if your organization hasn't formally documented their project management processes. And the formal documentation is writing procedures that everyone in your organization follows. One common mistake that I have seen is that organizations either don't have a defined methodology or they fail to follow the one that they have. No methodology is also equal to no inconsistently repeatable process, meaning that there is a process but it's not consistent. So if you have a process and it's not consistent, it means that there's no methodology in place. Even if your methodology is tailored to some specific needs, it's essential to document it and ensure that it's repeatable. The key here is process maturity. Now, when we are saying that process maturity, we are talking about how you are defining and you are growing your program or growing the projects and the processes that you have. ISO looks for well-defined, repeatable processes. That includes your approach to project management. Anyone that follows the same steps and get the same results is what we talk about when we're talking about repeatable project processes. Now, another common pitfall is failing to provide evidence that the processes was followed. If your methodology states that the information security considerations should be addressed during the project initiation phase, you need to have some form of evidence to demonstrate that that was actually done. The evidence could be some meeting notes that you had, the checklist, email confirmation. All those things are the evidences that we talk about that you need to provide to the auditor when the auditor comes about. Whether that's through meeting notes, reports, or any other document, the key is ensuring that you show that these steps are taken, presented to them. Now, in conclusion, integrating information security into project management isn't difficult, but it does require a little structure and discipline. The structure talks about the clear plan, and that's what we call a framework. Then the discipline is making sure that it's repeatable, following it at every time. And you need to have a documented project management methodology. Integrate information into various points of that methodology and make sure that you are documenting everything along the way. This checklist approach ensures that no steps are skipped, and you also have the right evidences to provide to the auditor when he comes around. If you do that, you'll be on your way to meeting the ISO 27001 requirements and maintaining a strong security posture in your projects. Always remember, you're not just meeting the requirements for ISO, but you are also protecting your security system. And so when we say your security posture or your security, we say that your overall readiness to prevent and respond to threats. Why? Because if you're able to integrate this from the scratch, you realize that at every section or at every sector, you have security that is in place. I hope this makes so much sense to you. Thank you for joining this class, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.